Resuming the debate, the honourable member for Peace River Westlock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As it's my first time to give a speech in this House, I'd like to begin by thanking, first of all, my wife and children for being like solid support behind me. I'd like to thank my campaign team, specifically my parents and my siblings who did put in countless hours on my campaign, and my best friend Dennis, who set up way too many signs and put on about, 6,000 kilometers on his own pickup truck, driving around the vast riding of Peace River Westlock. My campaign manager John for helping me to win this seat. So it was a spirited campaign, and I appreciate their help. Mr. Speaker, I stand today to address the issue of union transparency and employee voting rights. If left as it is, Bill C-4 will repeal two pieces of legislation that workers across Canada have fought hard to achieve. Unions, employers, and most importantly, the employees have all expressed their belief that the certification and decertification of unions should be determined in a free and democratic manner. Our country is founded on this same principle, that those who are governed have the right to make their choice by secret ballot, a method that removes fear and ensures that the worker is free of intimidation both from employers and unions. The Liberal Party wants to reverse this. They are willfully ignoring workers across Canada who have stated that they want, namely, the right to vote in secret. Mr. Speaker, all of us here in this House represent a group of constituents. We are here by their consent, by their vote, which was cast free of harassment according to their conscience. How can the Liberal Party not allow workers across Canada this same right? Before the Employees' Voting Rights Act came into force, union certification was heavily weighted in favor of unions. A trade union was automatically certified if a majority of the employees simply signed a membership card. This is a process that lent itself to manipulation and abuse. Without a secret voting system in place, both employers and unions held a position of power over the employee. The Voting Rights Act changed that. It put unions and workers on a level playing field. Union certification is now done according to the free and secret votes of a majority. Employees make their decisions through the privacy of a secret ballot and are less subject to intimidation. Prior to the Act, a 35% threshold was needed to create a union in a federal jurisdiction. Interestingly enough, a 50% threshold was needed to decertify a union. Under the Voting Rights Act, a 40% threshold was set to trigger a vote either way. The Act successfully put equal weight in both certification and decertification process, giving workers the right to determine whether or not their workplace should be unionized. If the Liberal Party wants to repeal this Act, they will strip democratic right away from our nation's workers. Clearly, the Liberals believe that union demands take precedence over workers' rights. Mr. Speaker, to expand on this topic, I have a number of concerns. Many members of this House will agree that historically, around the world, positions of power can give rise to the abuse of power. Without checks and balances, workers' rights are, without exception, open to abuse. This is the reason why democratic governments worldwide have legislation in place governing certifications of unions. Preventing abuse of power is not a new concept. In the United States, at the federal level, they use secret ballot voting to determine union certification. The unions themselves use secret ballot voting as a means of electing their union leaders. Polls among union and former unionized employees have consistently shown 83 to 89% support for the secret ballot voting. This system is a widely accepted method of determining certification. Why does the Liberal government want to repeal the law that keeps Canadian workers free from pressure, manipulation, or intimidation from unions or employers? It is interesting to note, Mr. Speaker, that 5 provinces already use secret ballot to determine certification. If the Liberal government repeals the Voting Rights Act, federally regulated workers will once again have fewer democratic rights than their provincial counterparts. Who wins in this scenario? Before the Voting Rights Act existed, union organizers and management held an unfair advantage over Canadian workers. If this law is repealed, it is a Canadian worker who loses. Anytime a democratic right is repealed, it is our nation as a whole who loses. Bill C-4 poses another problem. It seeks to repeal a requirement for labor organizations to be financially transparent. Financial transparency is the bedrock of financial accountability. Why does the Liberal government seek to undermine worker and taxpayers' rights to financial accountable unions? There is a public interest in this, Mr. Speaker. Union fees reduce taxes, therefore affecting all Canadians. Union workers pay union dues, yet without this legislation in place, unions are not obligated to tell workers where and how this money was spent. Before and during the federal election, unions spent millions of dollars to fight the Conservative Party. Taking away financial transparency is nothing more than a Liberal measure to thank unions. And again, who is the biggest loser if this law is repealed? The worker, the taxpayer, and our country. We are a nation that demands financial accountability of our federal government, our provincial and municipal governments, and our charities. Unions enjoy a wide range of tax benefits, and this special treatment impacts all Canadians. I am sure each member of this House would stand by and proclaim the belief in the principles of transparency, accountability, and democracy. Yet, with this bill, the Liberal Party does the exact opposite. Let me be clear, this law does not regulate the activities of unions, nor does it mandate how they spend their money. It does not violate any of the rights guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. What it does do is ask for limited disclosure of salary, benefits, and paid time spent on political activities. In short, it is the voice of the workers asking how the union spent their money. Financial transparency legislation for unions is not new. The United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, and France all have this legislation in place. The Canadian labor organizations headquartered in the United States must already disclose financial information to the American government, and transparency is a deterrent. Transparency is a deterrent. It is a means to keep abuse in check. It is a way to protect against corruption. Quite frankly, the fact that some unions and the Liberal Party wish to repeal this law leads me to question, why? What are they hiding? It may be in the interest of this House to know that in the United States, a similar piece of legislation led to more than 900 criminal convictions for inappropriate and fraudulent activity. Unions in Canada receive public benefits. The taxpayer has a right to know how their money is spent. Union members have a right to know how their union dues are spent and whether or not they are spent wisely and effectively. Currently, this is the case. If Bill C-4 goes through as it is, Canadian workers and the taxpayer will suddenly be left in the dark. Financial transparency is a good public policy. Secret ballot voting is a democratic right. Fellow colleagues, Bill C-4 is flawed. It seeks to repeal what Canadian workers and taxpayers have fought to put in place. Members of this House should remember that these same workers and taxpayers are the ones who chose you to represent them here in this House. I ask for you to vote against this bill. When the rights are stripped away from Canadian workers, we all lose. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.